Osceola School Board Workshop to order at this time. I want to welcome everybody here and thank you for joining. I know we have representatives from a number of organizations that we definitely value your input and expertise in this area, and so we look forward to potentially even talking with you throughout this process. At this point in time, though, we'll turn the workshop over to Superintendent and whoever you'd like on staff to go over the items with us.
Todd, are you going to come with as well?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start if I may. Thank you, school board members. We've had a presentation, I think, a month or so ago in reference to impact fees. At that time, we took your direction to reach out to some of our partners and get some additional information. I believe some of those partners are here with us today, and Clyde's going to introduce them here periodically. And we'll also be reviewing some additional information that we hope will be helpful for you as you make your decision and your recommendation as to where we want to go with our impact fee study. I guess I'll turn it over to Clyde.
Thank you, Tom. Board, we, following our last workshop where we discussed this initially, the direction was to approach growth management task force with the chamber, speak with our business advisory board, and also to get input from the Realtors Association and the Greater Orlando Builders. We've been successful with that, and I have put together for your review, if you'll pass those around, this is a brief summary of our meetings with each group. And I know from the business advisory board,
No.
they're not, but so we'll go over. Let me go over real quick what came out of the business advisory board on August the 27th. Tyndall Oliver gave the presentation, the PowerPoint that the board had, and they recommended to stay with the methodology of using the current method for evaluating, which is the single-family townhouse, multifamily condo, and mobile homes, versus going to square footage or number of bedrooms. They felt that this was probably the best method to stay with. I've wrote on here that staff requested for the study to show the three different methods, and at the recommendation of the business advisory was to stay with the current method. On August 21st, Tyndall Oliver gave the presentation to Growth Management Task Force, and I know that the chairman of that committee, Larry Walters, is here, and co-chairman John Adams is here for any input or discussion you may have with them. But basically, we had very good discussions at length with the members from Osceola County staff was there. We had the Home Builders Association and several local builders and engineers were there, as well as representatives from the chamber. But their big hold up on the impact fees is they would like to have the timeshare units or those short-term rentals removed from the study, because the rationale is that they are paying a resort fee, and that they're not generating the number of students that would predicate having an impact fee for schools.
I have a question, Clyde.
Yes, sir.
Are those units deed restricted, that they can only be used for hospitality, or are they not deed restricted?
I don't believe they're deed restricted. I know that,
Some of them
and
are.
in my it may
Some of
be.
them are,
They
some
they
of them
could be, I guess.
As
that'd
far
be
as they are,
individual.
because I know that like Indian Wells, Indian Ridge, those were originally set up when they were built as short-term rentals. Well, as the inventories become older,
Yeah.
and plus, you know, they're big units, there's 4 or
Yeah.
5 bedrooms, so you got probably 60 to 70% of them now are occupied by families.
Right. One thing that we did, we took the track layers from all the information that we've been able to gather for our DDP projections, and Christopher Melendez, who's our mapping specialist, took that information and has generated reports where we are generating a significant number of students from what's labeled short-term rentals. Okay? With that, staff is recommending that that stays in the impact fee study. We do think that they generate a significant number of students, and if we were to remove that group, there would be quite a reduction in what we would be able to assess. That's our recommendation.
I agree.
Yeah, and we do have the information to share. I think Rhonda's here with that if we need to go over it. Lastly, I'll go over what the Greater Orlando Builders Association, if you'll recall, through growth management, Mr. Walters' office, the Builders Association on July 24th issued a statement regarding the impact fees, and they recommended to keep the fees at the current rate, which is at 10% based upon the previous study. So that ultimately, they want the district to look for other funding mechanisms and not rely solely on new construction to meet our capacity needs, but understanding that that's a timely proposition anyways, they would recommend that we keep it at this current rate and not implement anything off the new study. So that's really my portion of this. I'll turn it over to Todd for some financials, I guess.
Thank you.
Did you want me to proceed, or did you want to?
Clyde, do we want to hear from his representative?
Well, sure, if it's up to the
Yeah,
chairman.
why don't we do that? So anybody that came to speak, I know Larry, you please by all means come up and address the board. Let us know anything that maybe Clyde didn't share that you want to articulate from growth management. And we'll do the same for the home builders. I don't think the Realtor representative is here, and then if Charlie shows up for business advisory.
Tim, were you?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know about realtor people, I don't know.
Hey, man.
Get my notes out.
I'm not saying it because it's you, but only because we are on a short time schedule though. So anybody that comes up to speak, please just do recognize we've got a short window of time before we start our school board meeting as well. So
I recognize that, and I don't want to be hodgepodge about my comments, so I kind of put them together. And I disagree with Clyde just a little bit.
Okay.
We don't want to do away with short-term rental, but we do want to ask for your consideration and modification. So let me start by saying thank you to the board. Thank you to Clyde, and to Chris, and to all the staff members that came to growth management and opened up and said, here we are, let's talk about this. I really appreciate that. Growth management also appreciates that you change the methodology of which you calculate your impact fees. It's been the methodology that you used to calculate them by, we were not in favor of, and finally in this new round, you changed the methodology to use tender olive oil. And what basically that says is, instead of having a 20-year capital plan that you back calculated the student station cost, you actually went in and calculated the student station cost and you moved it forward. That really is an important difference than how you did it in the past, and I think you'll be really satisfied with the results of how you're calculating it this time. We agree with administration of the payment of impact fees with an overall land use. We don't really care for the bit about breaking it up into square footages or for bedrooms. It just makes it a lot more complex to understand when people are coming in. So we as growth management would also recommend that you leave it as just single family residential, condo, apartment, and so forth. Make it real easy on how that works. The area that we think we need additional information is the single family resort short-term rental in the West Overlay. Reason I say that is there's some gentlemen back here that are actually from the resort area. They have, just to give you an example, approximately 10,000 units out there that are rented as short-term rental that impact fees have been paid on. So if you take 10,000, and just to make the numbers easier, if it was 10,000, that's $100 million that you collected that there's no students coming from. If I'm really wrong by 50%, it's $50 million. And if I'm still wrong by 25%, it's $25 million. So it's a lot of money being collected from an industry that doesn't contribute students to the system And I'm assuming that you have those dollars sitting in your bank account, so as soon as they need schools out there, when they're rented, you can run out there and build a school, because that's enough money to do that. Now, that's not a challenge, that's just, it's a lot of money. So it needs to be reviewed. We know what the overlay district is for short-term rental. You have the ability to go into your system and determine what the students are in that system. Like, for instance, I don't know what those numbers are, but I know in Formosa Gardens, which is a project of mine, and talking to the owner there, it runs about 10 or 15% long-term who have homestead exemption. So only 15% of those units that are short-term rental in Formosa Gardens contribute students to the system. So what we would be asking you to do is to get that data. You've done a really good job of changing the process, calculating the impact fee, getting the right data, putting it forward. Let's not leave this industry stranded out there that really is a viable economic industry to the county, and have it paying impact fees to those enormous size impacts, cost, and not be evaluated. If you have the data, and this is my opinion, if you have the data and you decide to do it anyway, okay, all right, just have the data and know that that's what you're doing, and do it. But let's not assume that they're a big impact when maybe they're not an impact. I don't know right now that overall they're not an impact, or they are an impact. So we would request that you look at that.
Larry, but
Yes, sir.
realistically, as that inventory, like 10 years from now, it could be 50% on homestead in there. I mean,
It could.
we just don't know. I mean, there's not a deed
But our
restriction.
recommendation would be this. Our recommendation would be one of two things, and it may solve some problems on a number of fronts. One would be that you did the evaluation, and if it turned out to be 30% of those, all of those short-term rentals are providing kids, then you charge them all the next year 30% of the impact fee. The next year you evaluate it, and if it goes to 40%, you charge them 40% of the impact fee. I'm not asking, we are not, as growth management, asking you to exempt them, because we know that that is a management issue for you. We're just asking you to charge them fairly for the impact that they're on. You can either do it that way, or somehow, and I know this is a management nightmare, okay? We know that. That's the reason we're sitting here talking about it. Oh, charge them. If they turn into a long-term resident, make them go back and pay the impact fee. Have a way to track it, to do that. I'd almost suggest that if you have to do the same thing to the hotels that have people in them, because they're actually not supposed to have hotels in them, and that's long-term in those, and I understand the problem, truly I do, being a long-term resident. But in order for that industry to recover out there, it needs its hotel rooms. It needs to be able to rent them to visitors.
Let me
Yes,
just
sir.
ask a question. So when you made a suggestion, I look right over to our attorney, because I'm trying to find out if this is legal. I've always said, gotta do a fair number. Whatever a fair number is, if it's 15% for these timeshare, 30%, 80%, okay. Because I thought of this too. I said, we could do the percentage, but then just like Jay just said, what if it goes to 50%, then we jump to 50%. I also thought upon the time that it turns to be homesteaded. Once somebody says, okay, I want to homestead this, then they pay them. That's another way. Another way is, how do we, as soon as we find out 2 students are coming from a property right in your gardens there, and wait a minute, this is supposed to be short-term, but it's rented long-term, or these kids are coming in, because this happens. It happens all the time.
I don't disagree with that.
So how can we logistically and legally collect that fair amount, whatever that is?
I wasn't aware this issue was gonna come up, but I recall the one appellate decision I'm aware of in this area, is out of Volusia County. And it's either Ormond by the Sea or Aberdeen. It was a community that was intended to be over age 55 residents. And they petitioned the county to exempt them from the impact fee. And the appellate court said you would convert it to an improper tax if you started picking and choosing. The only way you can be exempt from the impact fee if you're building residential dwelling units is if you are consistent with the federal program for senior housing over 55, and you have, and it was quote in the case, because I remember it, irrevocably recorded deed restriction. So the deed restriction has to be irrevocable and recorded. Those are the precise words. So probably 15 years ago, we had a developer come in and argue short-term rental. And you need to know your current impact fee ordinance provides for the opportunity to have a quasi-judicial proceeding in front of the school board where they try to prove that they're eligible for an alternative assessment. That for special reasons, they should get an alternative assessment amount for their impact fee. So they went through that process, but they asked for a complete exemption because they were short-term rental. And they were zoned for short-term rental. And we relied on the case law, and we said no, we denied, and the local circuit court judge affirmed that ruling in his appellate capacity. You know, so I'd have to look at it a little more closely, but I think it's pretty tricky because I think you run the risk. You know, the whole thing is a little bit of a legal fiction anyways with the dual rational nexus test and all that it's not a tax. They're dancing around because we don't have the authority to impose a tax. The county can't impose a tax by ordinance. And the language in that appellate case is if you start giving the exemption because it's zoned short-term rental or zoned or it's intended to be over 55 without an irrevocable deed restriction, okay, that you could convert it into an unconstitutional tax. And so I'd have to look at it closely. I wasn't aware this issue was going to come up. It's an issue that may be beyond the ability of smart people to just rationally come up with alternative ways to approach it. I think it might be something where if it's a residential dwelling unit and it gets very specific, you know, if it's got toilet facilities, it's got bathroom facilities, it's got a kitchen, it's got a place to sleep, you know, voila, you know, it's a residential dwelling unit. And the court in the Volusia County case specifically said these things could be intended for age 55 and older, but marketing plans go awry, and down the road it's geared up to be a residential dwelling unit that could support families with children. And they specifically acknowledge that, and the only way to avoid that risk is if it's irrevocably deed restricted to short-term, to senior. So it could be an issue, could be a problem.
Well,
On the legal
certainly
side.
you can't make that decision unless you have the data in order to evaluate it. So I would say that if you knew how many short-term rentals there were, and you knew how many students you were generating, and you knew it was 15% or 50% or 90%, and you knew how much money you were generating on top of that, that might have something to do with the decision that you make. And that's what we're asking you to do,
And
is
I
to
agree with-
evaluate it.
I agree with that, but as to what Jay said, let's say the gardens are 30% right now, and 2 years from now, they're 50, 60%. We can't keep coming back every year to do a new study to find out.
Well, you don't have to do a new study. All you have to do is reevaluate that ratio. That ratio of the number of students that you have and the number of having, that's all. And make it into things so that you can reassess automatically every year. You reassess that percentage that they pay because of that evaluation. You don't need to reevaluate the whole impact.
Let's do the math. Let's just pick a number, doesn't matter. You got 15% in there right now. So
Maybe.
the next property that gets built, we charge 15% of the overall. Next year, it's at 30%. We've
Then
lost
everybody,
that.
if the average was 30%, then you'd charge 30% of the impact fee to everybody that built.
And 15% this year, 30%
Could be.
next year. And then we're gonna have that bill
If it's
come back and say,
migrating
"Wait a minute."
towards full-time residency, then the number will go up. I mean, no
Well,
question about it.
That's where it's going right now.
Um,
That's where it's going.
I'm sorry, but from what I understood from Mr. Brown was that, you know, such a scheme, it seems like the case law, or at least some litigation has already said that it's not workable, because as long as the potential exists there, we're running into setting up a scheme that makes it into an impermissible tax. Did I understand that correctly?
I'd like to go back and I'll brief everyone with the memo, because I didn't know, because I know right where to look. And the other issue is, how do you ever go back and collect an impact fee
Can't.
on properties that are now converting? Because then people buy into those units, the developer is long gone, and just
He's at a disadvantage.
Well,
But hold on,
wait,
one
wait,
second,
wait, wait,
Phil. Just because I don't want to get too much into the weeds in this one item, there's other people that are here as well that like to address this, and we can kind of vet some of this
And I'll
out.
brief the issue
But
and-
the other point of it is, what Mr. Walter's saying is not that we would then retroactively chase somebody down. We're saying that, he's saying that 15% absorption rate, so we're gonna charge that much for every home. And then there's a trigger point that says, January 1 of next year, you recalculate whatever it is at that point. Every new build from that point forward then gets charged at the current rate. So you're not charging back to anybody, you're charging based on new growth that's coming in, based on the
And
most
that could
current
be- and that
rate
could
that's
be
being
legally-
utilized.
That could be legally risky, because then the uniformity of the fee is important
Sure.
to support its legality.
Right.
And you're just making a different set of assumptions then.
Sure. And we can get into all the legal details of it after you have an opportunity to
leave it
provide
like it.
information, but at a minimum, hearing from Larry and John and the rest of your group on what your recommendations to this body, I want you to know, because you weren't at our last workshop, at least I don't think you were, this board was very intentional about saying we wanted you guys engaged in this
Yeah, and we
conversation.
appreciate
So we
that.
appreciate the feedback. We may not agree on all the points,
course.
but there's still things that are gonna help us think through what we should do here.
And I'll finish up my presentation, and then you can go on. Last but not least, we've just come out of the worst recession we've been in that I can remember here in Osceola County, and I've been here a darn long time. Okay, I don't know how fragile it is. So our recommendation from growth management is whatever fee you recommend be same as HBA's. You just move it to the existing fee this year. Let's put the puzzle together. I don't want anything I've said to misconstrue how important I think education is. I'm a product of the education system here in Osceola County. Okay, so I know that from a development, economic development standpoint, education is extremely important. But so is economic development, so is other things. And so it's a puzzle that you folks are elected to put together carefully to try to keep it in balance. And I can tell you today that if you made the whole fee go up, it would be the highest in the state. We've already had an example of that occurring. About 4 years ago, Lake County decided, we don't care what anybody says, we'll make ours the highest in the county. And they did. Today, it's 25% of what it was, the highest in the county. It's almost the lowest in the state, because they've realized what that's done to them during this economic downturn. So I'm not telling you not to approve it. I'm just telling you, if you approve it, give serious consideration to all the puzzle parts that's there. The economy, the school, everything that works together in putting this together, that we just don't disrupt finally the beginning of a recovery in our economic system.
Let me ask two questions. It's
Sure.
different. When I first came on the board, I was adamant about getting a 10% rollback in our impact fee. And that was based solely on the cost of the construction. Material costs were down, everything else, labor was down, everything was down. And the first year that we tried that as a board, the county commissioners didn't even listen to it. It's up to them to make the final decision.
Recognize
We
that.
did it again, and that 10% reduction went through because they eliminated transportation impact fees, and they would look silly not allowing ours after, due consideration. So you're saying keep it at that 10% rollback, number one. And two, you have down here other options beside impact fees. Help me.
Well, I don't know that you folks have any other options beside that. Hopefully, you're working with the state to try to up the 1.5%.
PICO monies and everything else,
PICO
but-
thing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I recognize we had this conversation at Growth Management. Osceola County is a fledgling county. We're young. We don't have much population. Our ad valorem base of which we tax against is very low. It's not high enough yet obviously to run a high-quality education system. So you're having to go in and make some maneuvers to subsidize that. Eventually, though, one day, by putting these puzzles together, by making the economy grow, making the school system grow together, we will have a tax base that's large enough to fund that. And then you can start buying down your impact fee like all the other counties are doing. We got counties, we'll be above every other county by $4,000 a unit. I mean, that's how much higher we will be if you implement it at a full rate. And so a lot of the counties are buying theirs down. And so we can't do that yet. I recognize that. We don't have enough ad valorem base to do that. Your 1.5 cents just doesn't make enough money to do that. But it'll get there. You know, we've come a long way in the last 30 years. You know, I remember what it was 35, 40 years ago, and this is a different county. It's a different place. We're moving forward. The quality of life is better. We just need to be patient. We'll get there. That's,
Mr. Chairman, I just want to point out, I met today with the chairman of the Lake County Commission, Jimmy Connors, to talk about this. And he said, yeah, they did roll it back. He said, but the school district's been short of money. They just had to raise millage in the county too, which is, he says they should never should. He says rolling it back really didn't help one way or the other. They probably shouldn't have done it, he said.
well, that may be true,
I'm
but they
sharing.
did in fact do it
Right,
because
they
they were
did,
trying to
they did.
stimulate their economy, because with no economy, nothing
Right.
happens. So
Larry,
it's a puzzle.
Thank you for your time and all the work that I know you guys do week in and week out at Growth Management to review these important matters. And guys, this is something that they spend a lot of time going through, discussing, and trying to figure out what the right thing is. The other thing I'd point out is that the other option piece is actually into the home builders, not under Growth Management, and so they may be able to talk to that in just a moment as well. So
Okay, thank you.
sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, Larry.
Come on down, home builders, and Joe, welcome.
Welcome.
Hi,
Ward,
Joe.
thank you very much. And repeat what Larry said, Clyde, Chris, Todd, been most helpful, forthcoming. Steve, they really provide a lot of information, allowed us to have input, and we certainly appreciate it. The Greater Orlando Builders Association, formerly HBA Metro Orlando, doesn't oppose this 10,147, although we do request keep it at the 10% reduction, the same as it is now. Adopt that $10,000 rate with the 10% reduction, just to account for the students that are coming to school that don't pay any impact fee, namely your hotels and motels. You have students out there, the equivalent of maybe 4 or 5 elementary schools they would fill, just for the fact that they come from a facility that doesn't pay a dime in impact fees. It's been said, well, it's short-term, it's in transition. I've been here 15 years, and it's been transitioning for 15 years. So, and it seems like it's more every year that that population is increasing. It's, you know, as I said, you know, we do support the, this dwelling type as it is now, whether you have townhome, single-family resident, multifamily. Doing it the other way would certainly be a logistical nightmare, trying to calculate how many square foot, how many bedrooms, and if you even looked at bedrooms as you get more bedrooms in the house, your fee actually goes down. Doesn't make sense to me, but that's how the tourist economy works. They rent 7, 8 bedroom houses, and because they're coming here not to go to school, but to visit, you know. But that's all. Adopt it at this rate with, please consider that 10% reduction for the population that doesn't pay anything. You know,
Right.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe.
I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
I might as well get it out there right now. You know, it's gonna be difficult for this board to make a determination based on limited information. You know, I might have to make a recommendation or a suggestion that this board waits until the new board is seated, and I can see Clarence back there, thank you for being here. Nice to have someone with an accounting background. I can just see the numbers clicking back there. You know, I know that the hotel motels, how many students we have in there right now? 2,000 something?
Almost
4,000, 4,000, and they pay nothing.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to beat up on them, you know, they have to try and make it, they pay a resort fee. And I know that a lot of families, they move from one hotel to another, and it's a nightmare for us to try and figure out what bus, what school, what everything else. With 4,000, there's a price for that. And I don't know how, if we can collect from them at all. I don't know how it could be done. I don't know if there's a way we could tap into that resort fee, that bed fee, whatever you want to call it, to say, okay, you've got that many, if there's 100 units in this building, which they don't have, 100 units, and 50% of it is, we need 50% of that bed fee. I don't know if we can do that. I keep saying it over and over again, we gotta do a fair amount. Where are these kids coming from, and how do we collect? Because we have to educate them. At the end of the day, we have to educate them. We just can't throw tents up. I'm open to any kind of suggestion from rest of the board or from our staff, from our
Tourist
attorney.
taxes can't be used for anything
I-
but to promote tourism.
That's it.
But here would be my comment though on that, and this is just an off-the-cuff thought to your question is, bear in mind, a number of the students that are living in the hotel motel along the West 192 corridor came from an existing property at some point in time. There is an influx of some from other areas outside of Osceola County, but I also know there's a number of people that bought homes, lost their homes during the recession, and then ended up transplanting into those as well. And so there is the potential that a swath of them did pay impact fees when they either built a new home back in 04, 05, 06, whatever it may have been, and or paid it embedded in the cost of the resale property they purchased originally and then lost to the foreclosure proceedings. So I don't know if it's a fair assumption to say that none of them ever paid an impact fee. They very well may have at some point. We may have generated that revenue we needed for the student station that they're taking up. So again, that doesn't solve anything, but I don't know that I feel like it's a very a fair comparison to say that because they're there, they've never paid it. I definitely think there's some that haven't, but I think there's some that have also because being in real estate, I know that a number of them are people that used to live in single-family homes, and they already paid that fee embedded in that price.
No, I can agree with that. I recently had a property up on Craigslist for rent. And within an hour of me putting it on, I had 7 phone calls. Not one of them were coming from Osceola or even Florida. And every one of them I had to reject because they were just coming here without a job. My job transfers, where do you work at? They told me the business. There's no business like that in Central Florida. Then they kind of stammer around. Now, where are they going to end up? They're going to end up in a hotel. Basically, that's it. They're coming down here, and where are they going to land?
Yeah, and that's absolutely an element of exactly what you're talking about. I agree that there is a small portion of that, but just again, from my point of view, I don't know that it's fair to say that none of them have ever paid.
Oh, I
an
don't
But keep
disagree
in mind,
with you.
Mr. Chairman, at 4,000 students, and there's a half a student generation rate per single-family residential, that would mean 8,000 houses,
If that was the.
if
Yeah.
that many. And I don't think that's a realistic number, that 8,000 homes, people moved into hotels from 8,000 homes here.
I believe a large percentage, because that happens to me all the time, and it probably does to you too, is their home went foreclosure, they have good credit, the only thing that sticks out is that foreclosure, short sale, deed in lieu, whatever, and then they move into a rental property. And that property paid impact fees. That's probably the large majority of those that move into a rental property. They have a job here, they have a family here, they let their kids go into schools, whatever. But there's still that percentage, and I don't know how big a percentage it is, so.
And I don't say any of that because I think it's any part of our solution, but just because we were talking about it, I want to make sure my thoughts were heard on it. But Joe, we hear your recommendation, and if to clarify it, adopt the current proposed fee with a 10% reduction.
Exactly.
Stay with the same methodology that we're using right now in the previously proposed impact fee.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
And Joe, just, I was the one that brought up, let's try and do bedroom or square footage. It was an option. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Let the greater brains figure it out.
It's good, and explore all your options.
Sure.
That's what you wanted. That's when we met with the superintendent. She says, she was certainly open to anything that, was brought to her. She doesn't, discount anything, and we certainly appreciate that,
Okay. All right.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
Joe.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. And then Charlie, I know you're here as well. If you want to comment in the future on business advisory position as well, we'd welcome that.
Good afternoon. My name is Dennis Hanks. I'm with the Central Florida Vacation Rental Managers Association. We're the professional association for short-term rentals here in Florida. I hope I have enough handouts for everyone. But we do echo the comments of Larry and Joe and some of their concerns and what they're projecting on some of the rates. The number we have been talking about is the 10,000 number in Osceola County for short-term rentals right now. Those are the ones that we know are licensed, paying taxes, and through the county tax collector's office, we know that they have a state license in place. That maybe we know the legal considerations of all this. That certainly is something that you can use to track short-term rentals. They all have to get a state license from the DBPR, and every year it's renewed, so they have that opportunity to track it that way. We're just happy to be at the table here and be able to work with you on this. We feel that the short-term rental industry now, working closely with Experience Kissimmee, a destination marketing organization, is really an important part of the tourism economy. We are at about 46% of the tourism development tax that's collected in Osceola County compared to the hotels. It's going to continue to grow. We know that there's a significant amount of short-term rentals projected in the pipeline right now. And, that's going to be helping us to rebound as an industry moving forward.
I have a question for you. So as you've got this inventory coming online, being built, et cetera, what percentage of, say, the new units that are being built and CO'd so that they can be occupied, actually you've got some sort of a deed restriction in there where they can only be used in perpetuity as a short-term / vacation hospitality property?
I don't know the exact number that's deed restricted, but what we're seeing is a new type of product that's coming on the market. And we know that there's been conversion to long-term rentals. We know it. It's the older developments have started to go into full-time residence, but the new properties that are coming on board are resort style. They've got lazy rivers and water slides and like Encore and some of
With
the
deed
others.
restrictions?
And some will
Those are-
have deed restrictions.
The ones that do, then I would think would be exempt.
Those are least likely to see conversion over because it's just a different type of
It's deed
product.
restricted.
So, we're just, like I said, we're happy to be here and be able to have this discussion. We hope to work with you, moving forward. It's an unbelievable industry and it's going to continue to grow. Experience Kissimmee now is putting a significant amount of marketing dollars towards the short-term rental market because it is bringing in such great revenues on the tourism development tax. But anything that we can do to work with you, certainly we're here to help and with the industry here in Central Florida to do that with you.
Thank you for coming, and as I expressed earlier, this board is intentional about trying to get stakeholder input, so we appreciate you being here to share that with us.
Great.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Charlie?
Good afternoon. Charlie Rogers. I'm the chairman of the Business Advisory Board, and sorry I was a few minutes late. Obviously, the major role of the Business Advisory Board is to track the impact fee revenues and sales tax revenues, which we do on a monthly basis. However, we have talked about this situation. Clyde made a presentation at our last Business Advisory Board meeting, and the Business Advisory Board wanted to support staff's recommendation of keeping the format the same. We were concerned about getting into the square footages, the number of bedrooms, and the gamemanship that could be played and how that was going to work. So obviously, our major role is just to track the income coming in, but I think as a board, we recommended that we support the staff's recommendation of keeping the format the way it is.
Great.
Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you.
And the
Appreciate
fee.
it.
And the fee?
Yep. Thank you. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we covered the basis of stakeholder input that people that are here to speak tonight, so I want to thank you again for coming, and obviously remain throughout the balance of the meeting so you can hear kind of board discussion as well. Todd, I know you wanted to go through the financials for our benefit, so if you want to go through that now, it'd be appropriate.
I think that's the next one. I mean, the staff really wants to thank the Business Advisory Group, also the Growth Management Task Force and the Greater Orlando Builders Association, and really for their input. And also Tyndall Oliver for putting what we feel is a really good study together that shows what the true cost is to build the student station here in Osceola County. On the cover sheet here is what you're looking at here. This is actually taken from the impact fee study. This is table 12. This would be page 25 of that impact fee study. And what this is the breakdown on that calculated fee that staff is going to propose recommending to the board in a board and also at the workshop here and in the board setting. The calculated fee for a single-family home right now is about $10,147. The current adopted fee that we're imposing right now is $8,742. That would be a 16.1% change or increase. The next page of the document would be your table 9 from the impact fee study. This just shows the generation rate, student generation rates per unit, and I just felt it was important to bring that out and share that with the group. The next page of this is now some of this information I've shared when I met with other leaders and other community members regarding what's really happening in Osceola County. And you have a state population growth by county. This information is published by the Florida Demographic Estimating Conference. It just kind of puts in perspective, Osceola is the 3rd fastest growing county in the state. as a percentage. So as you can see, their estimate is about 3.03%. That's really all I wanted to share with you on that page. So I'm going to be leading up to hear something from the board. This next page is, I want to talk about the revenue that's generated from the 1.5 capital outlay millage. This report shows every district, and you can see every ID associated. That's the number that's assigned by the state for our district. Osceola is number 49, and I highlighted that in yellow for your ease of read. The tax roll for Osceola County in 2014 was $18.3 billion. The revenue that was generated from that was about $26.4 million. A COFD student is a student that we have to find a home for in the traditional setting. A COFD student does not include a charter school student, does not include a virtual or a McKay Scholarship student. So this is a true student that we have to provide a home for in the school setting. That's 48,930
And just for
COFD students.
some reference, right now, our appraised taxable values in 2008 were $28 billion versus the $18 billion you pointed out now, so it's a big, go ahead, Todd.
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
The revenue, so I'm breaking it down as revenue per COFD student, and that kind of puts it in perspective now when you're comparing districts with one another. As you can see, Osceola generates about $539 or $540 per COFD student. If you compare that to just our neighboring county, like Orange County, for example, they're generating $747. That helps with Yellow Fleet. It helps with your repairs and maintenance on your current infrastructure. So they actually are making $200 more per COFD student. As you can see, we rank 41, and 41 is not good. The higher the number, correct. And as you can see, the average, if you draw your eye all the way to the bottom of the page, it says revenue per COFD, it says $810. That's the average statewide. So we definitely receive less than the statewide average from as a revenue per COFD student. Okay. As I'm going across the page here, the next column actually shows 619. That's our actual COFD growth. That does not include charter schools again, virtual and McKay Scholarship. One of the things that has been so unique with this board is that how we embrace charter schools and that virtual component. That next column there shows that 15% of our student population actually attends a charter school, virtual, or McKay Scholarship program, as compared to Orange County, 7%. So we're really using charter schools to help meet capacity needs here in Osceola County.
How can there be a negative number there?
Well, school districts are declining in COFD numbers because more students are enrolling into a charter school, virtual, or McKay Scholarship program. So they're actually losing students that they don't have to provide a home for now. So that's why you see a negative number
I'm just
there.
comparing that to the number one, which is Monroe. They're doing pretty good there.
Yes.
Let's do that.
Yes. So, and I'm glad you pointed that out. That if it's a negative number, they're declining enrollment. So they don't have to provide a student station for them in a traditional setting. So they shouldn't have any capacity issues. Unfortunately, Osceola, we're averaging about a little over 600. Last year was 600, but we're averaging about, over the last 4 years, I think it was 800 on average per year. The impact fee, the next several columns here is just to talk about the impact fee. This was actually taken out of the study, and it was one of the exhibits from the study that was shared or produced by Tyndall Oliver. The study shows that in 2014, it was conducted for Osceola, and they assessed it would be about 10,147. Now, I just want to remind the board that when we're assessing how much truly does it for a new student station, they're looking at different factors. They're looking at building new facilities. They're looking at yellow feet, adding the additional yellow feet. They're looking at technology needs.
Land, everything else.
Everything. That's inclusive. That's a true number. That's what it really costs. So when we talk, we listen and we talk about, you know, let's take a percentage off the top of that number. Well, we have to make up that other 10% from somewhere else then, because now we're shorting ourselves funds to build a new student station. Also maybe add new, you know, yellow fleet for those new capacity. So I just wanted to share that with you. And it was something that was brought up a little earlier here on Orange County, for example. Orange County, their calculated impact fee was $13,000. That was in 2011. They're only adopting half of that. Well, the reason why is because they went out for a sales tax referendum, and it just passed again. So they have a half-cent sales tax referendum in Orange County that helps them meet capacity needs, repairs and maintenance, yellow fleet replacements, technology needs, and we're doing it very effectively with that sales tax
I'm
referendum.
glad you brought that up, because if, at the beginning of next year, if the county and the district decide to go together, because that's been bandied about, that we go together for a penny sales tax, then we get half. That's gonna affect what we're collecting for impact fees.
Correct, and that would be taken into consideration.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
I mean,
Mhm.
what are we, I'm trying to look at a timeline. I want to make sure I'm doing the right thing. We're up to my last meeting. If I'm going to assume that we're not going to go for that penny sales tax, then I have to consider the impact fee. If we are going to go in partnership with the county for that penny sales tax vote, and it passes, and we've got this high impact fee, we're crippling the business. That's all there is to it. Would there be some kind of switch that we can say, okay, this is what we're gonna adopt unless
I think
an
the
impact-
board could go in and recommend a percentage reduction similar to the 10% we did to bring that number more in line with, you know, or we, you know, if we did go after a penny or something like that, or some other significant means for revenue, possibly we go and have a new study done, possibly, and see what it comes.
I would like to share with the group that, yes, they do take that in consideration, any additional revenues that we receive from sales tax, for sales tax purposes. They actually take that in consideration when they're putting the study together, saying that they already took our quarter into consideration when they were assessing
current.
this. Correct. So, one of the approaches that we might want to take is that we don't know if that would be certain, we don't know how long, how far
I
downstream that
understand
is.
that.
And right now, the study is showing a real number of what's needed now. So-
I would venture to say though as well, that even if that were the case and there were a half-cent sales tax, that still doesn't mean that these two are mutually exclusive, because we're talking about $250 million in capital needs, and this impact fee, even if it was at the full rate recommended based on the study, isn't going to fill that gap.
No.
So you're talking about more than one. If we're going to say we need to be whole with what the state is requiring from us and what we need to build to deal with the growth that we're realizing, no one thing, and I think the Home Builders Association's letter even indicated that, is that, you know, really the impact fee doesn't solve our problem. It's just one part of a much larger problem. So I don't think that we can talk about it in the context of, if we do an impact fee, then that eliminates the need for a sales tax. If we do a sales tax, eliminates the need for this. Yeah, I mean.
I'm just put on the table so.
It's all part of the conversation.
Everyone can see it, everyone can hear it, that this is part of it.
I just want to share that back when at one time, our impact fee was below $4,000, and we went to over $9,000. It was quite a jump when we did it.
Yeah, I was
And
building when that happened.
And I remember, and I'm sure it didn't affect your building, because the point I want to make is, Jim Lentz, who's the developer of Harmony, he stormed out, he called me, he said, "This is gonna kill my development." 6 months later, he called me back and says, "We haven't missed a beat, it hasn't affected us one bit." I mean, I'll never forget that, because him and a lot of developers, but he called me back and said, the jump didn't affect us one bit.
What year was that?
That was back 05, 06.
That was right at the, and if you ask anyone in the business, they're hard pressed to get their good employees, because everybody dispersed after 2006. And I know several home builders are out of business.
Well, and bear in mind, this is part of a cost, so you're doing a financial, this builder coming in is doing a financial analysis and all the cost of what it's gonna take to get that blank, develop it, make it into a buildable lot, and put off an end product that then is an affordable price range for what the median income is in Osceola County. This component plays into that financial analysis considerably. And if it's too high, it throws it off, and now you have developers saying, we don't wanna come to Osceola because it just doesn't make enough sense, we're not gonna get the ROI that we need. If it's too low, then, maybe there's money on the table and we're cutting ourselves short because now we have student growth and population growth, we don't have the money to deal with it. So, we need to understand that, and I totally agree, and Mr. Walter said this, that whatever we do with this, we need to understand that we are just now at the beginning of an upswing of an economy that really isn't moving forward based on key fundamentals. And we know the Fed's already talking about raising the key interest rate once they get in the spring. There's a lot of things that are on the horizon that are going to have a negative or could have a negative impact on the economy. Adding one more thing to that, we know that we also need this economy moving forward so we have additional revenue in other areas to pay for classrooms and teachers and supplies and everything else. We need to keep all that in context.
This pays for classrooms and teachers.
It
Classrooms
all-
and supplies.
Yeah.
To continue on with the analysis here, I want to keep you just on this page just for a
Okay.
minute, because I want to state one other thing on here and put it in perspective for you. Let's go back to the revenue per COFTE student. Our COFTE students I said was 48,930. Now think about if we weren't using charter schools effectively, just say we didn't have any of our students in charter schools. That would increase our COFTE population back up to 57,000 students. Now take 57, or the revenues divided by 57,000, you have a lot less. But if you put it in percentages, as you can now compare it on true amounts per districts, taking the component out, you'd be a lot less, even further on. So I just want to share that with you. The next page of the document here is, this is showing what's happening right now, or what had happened in your capital outlay funds. We started in 2011, and I'm going to draw your eyes right to the bottom of the page where it says fund balance. It shows the beginning fund balance. We had $166 million. As you can see, that changed. It's been negative every year going across. We completely depleted our capital fund. Okay? I just want to share that, and something's going to eventually give a little bit, but I just wanted to put that in perspective to you. That the revenues are not materializing, and we need to look at other sources, not only impact fees, but other sources, continue to do our due diligence to make sure that we find revenue that will meet, so we can meet our unfunded needs that I discussed in earlier before the workshop settings with you. The next page of the document, that just shows what I'll be bringing forth tonight. This is your 5-year capital plan. It just shows for the 2014-15 year, at the very bottom where it says total ending fund balance, we're going to end at about 17.9. Okay? And we're going to try to, again, we're going to curtail expending on the capacity, so that will help us maintain in outlying years. So I don't see anything new being built. Okay? So the next page of the document, I wanted to break the analysis down a little bit different for you, because you have capacity sources and non-capacity. Your capacity is your impact fee revenues. Your non-capacity source is your 1.5 mil. So if you, for the 2014-15 year, we're going to generate about $28.2 or $3 million. As you can see, these are reoccurring expenditures that we have, our appropriations. So you have your debt service is 71%. That's a little high to me. That's a little alarming. We probably want to get that number down a little bit. We don't want to issue any more debt. And we also want to look at our, these are costs of running $800 million corporation, or business, I should say, education and business. Okay, so when we're set to total appropriation estimate for 45.6 million, we're going to leave it with a deficit of 17. We have a little bit of extra revenue coming this year, PICO, so that was a good thing there. We got some sales tax net flow-throughs. That's going to help us out. So you put that in there, that kind of helps us a little bit with our deficit, that takes it to $11 million deficit now. So how we're gonna offset it even further is I have to shift some of the debt service now to impact fee. That would be covered by impact fee, because it's schools that we built already where we pledged this amount of money to build new infrastructure, and then we went out and issued debt to do that. So we
What
have
number is that?
your debt service payment on
No,
top
what
there.
number are you gonna take from?
Those things that built new student stations, I can take those debt service payment and it can be paid out of capacity. And they actually brought that into the calculation when they were doing the calculation, because they discount our calculator rate then, when you're putting the analysis together, because that's the position that we're currently in, and that's what we're doing. Okay. So the remaining $1.9 million is really, we're just eating up our fund balance. The last page of the document, I just wanted to share with you, impact fee lost revenue. This is because we've been giving that 10% discount every year. So from 2012 to 2014, we lost about $4.7 million, okay? And then and I just put a scenario out there, and that's what the orange is for us. It's just because we keep hearing, keep the rate the same, keep the rate the same, keep the methodology the same, which is, that's, but I just want to share with you, we know that we're gonna continue to grow in Osceola County. So the calculated number of units that will most likely be permitted this year in 2015 is gonna be about 2,094. We'll have, if we went with the actual, what we're imposing right now for impact fees, and don't make any changes at all, that's another $2.5 million, $2.6 million of lost revenues that we could use to build new capacity. So we have to carefully look at it. It's like good economics. And you can't just look at one means, like everyone was sharing before. You have to look at all your options, and you don't want to, and that's what we're trying to show here in this report. And I just wanted to educate the board on what we're seeing here, just to make sure that you can make an informed decision when it comes to that time.
When you came up with this projected permits for 2015,
That was an average of 2 years. For the last 2 years, it was.
I don't believe that'd be a true number. I believe it's gonna go down a bit because of all the permitted properties that are sitting there waiting to be built.
Okay.
That's just my personal opinion. I don't know what the rest of the board or what our industry people back there think, but I think calculated of 10,147 new single-family homes for 2015.
No,
that's
that's the amount, that's the amount.
That's the impact fee.
That's the
Okay.
impact fee.
The
yeah.
actual
The actual impact,
87.
no, that's the actual, and then the next column for 2015,
Mhm.
that would be the number of units, so 2,094 units.
Do we really believe there'll be 1,686 single families permitted next year
In-
with all the, and I don't even know the number. I'm seeing a nod back there, so that's all I need. You're professionals. I might believe that's a little high based on the lots out there that have already been permitted. They can't all be spec homes, guys. You gotta get a buyer in there. So I will acquiesce to the professionals in the back.
It's only 100 I get your point on the permitting, that's only 140 homes a month though,
Well,
across the county.
how many do we already have?
And in closing to the whole thing is that if we do nothing, just do nothing, we're not considering inflationary factors. Inflationary factors, as we know, and we've seen over the last at least 3 years. And everything is going up. The cost, the building roads, building a house goes up.
Cost of money.
The cost of building a school is going up too, and that's what,
Well,
we just need to be cautious.
anybody that goes to Home Depot or Lowe's or anything like that over the last 6 months to a year and looking into the cost of basic air conditioning, water heater, roofing materials, box of nails, you name it, you can see that it's going up.
Heck, anybody that goes to Publix can see the same thing. So.
No, it's not Publix.
Oh, it's not Publix, I love Publix, I'm just saying, but inflation is happening.
Put
and
that out
it's
right
only gonna
now.
happen faster with the
Right.
federal policies we've been dealing with.
Right.
All right, Todd, does that complete your presentation?
completes it.
Okay. Superintendent, do you have anything additional you want to add?
No, sir.
Mr. Phelps?
We
Okay.
appreciate the.
Board dialogue, conversation,
When's this
comments?
gonna come to us for a vote?
That's part of what we can talk about right now. If the board feels like they're ready to go and wants to bring it, we can bring it in our October board meeting. If we feel like it's something that we should leave for the new board that's going to be seated in November to deal with, then we can talk about doing that as well. The only thing I'd point out that probably would mean we wouldn't be doing anything until January, based on my best guess, or being able to have anything finalized back to the county commission by January. Bear in mind that the new board isn't seated until November. Our December 2nd, I'm going to be talking about it in our board meeting. We may need to cancel that meeting because of Florida School Board Association stuff. So best case scenario, that means if we postpone it, we take action at our latter December meeting, which means it doesn't go to the county commission until the new year.
I have a question.
Can't move
Mrs.
forward
Luciano,
without it.
what's your recommendation?
Well, we've been looking at this carefully, and when, in speaking to staff, we know that we need the additional money.
That's my take on it too.
Yes,
So your recommendation is the full impact fee?
yes it is.
I'm sorry, repeat that?
The full impact fee.
Uh,
Now, I know that it was stated that there could be a 10% discount off of that, or decrease off of that, but in reality, when you do that,
It's already cost us
It's-
$4.7 million.
it's costing us a tremendous amount of money with that discount.
Third of an elementary school. I have no problem going over this material and being able to understand it completely. To me, you know what they say about making decisions in haste. I'm not trying to shirk my duty, but we also have to recognize that no matter what we do, it's going to be the county commissioner's decision. I know that we're going to have two new board members. I see one sitting back there. He's listening intently. Mr. Booth is not here. I'm hoping he's watching this. I hope he gets his material. I hope if he has any questions, he can ask any one of us and any staff member. I wouldn't want to make a decision that Mr. Booth has to live with one way or another, and Mr. Thacker one way or another. I don't know what the rest of the board feels on this.
I
We're
was-
only talking like one more meeting before we're done anyway.
Right. My kind of big picture, my general viewpoint is, first of all, I like the idea of staying with the current methodology, if anything, meaning adopting the new proposed fee with the 10% reduction. I have concern about going to the full recommended impact fee because, as I shared earlier, the construction industry is a vital component of our economy in Osceola County. It is finally getting back off the ground. This board and previous boards know how challenging it's been for this board to have revenue to deal with things when that sector of our economy wasn't doing well. And so I think now that it is finally getting off the ground, to do anything to shock that more than we need to, I think could end up having not only a negative impact on what I think we need to do to support the free enterprise as a whole, but also that could ultimately undermine exactly what we're needing to do. To your point, Mr. Wheeler, I know that your example you gave with Harmony, it didn't have an impact according to what you said, Mr. Lentz said. I would point out though as well, 2004, 2005, it didn't matter what you charged. People were making foolish decisions and buying things left and right, and that's part of how we ended up where we were. So I don't know if that isn't just more of an outlier than it is an indicator of what really the market could bear at this point in time. As far as the future board is concerned, I'm perfectly fine with waiting and allowing the future board to have a part in this conversation. They're going to be the ones that are going to have to deal with it in the long run, help oversee it and monitor it and make decisions about it. But at the same time, I'm not one that says that we should kick the can down the road either. And so if this board's ready to take action, I have no problem taking action. If you guys feel like waiting for the new board to be seated is what you prefer, I'm okay with that as well. But no matter what, I would just caution that we don't do anything that's going to ultimately cut off our nose to spite our face when we talk about what we need to do to make sure that this economy as a whole in Osceola County continues to be vibrant.
I'd like to piggyback on that. I agree with everything you said.
Absolutely.
I'm not trying to shirk my duty, but I also want the new board members, they're going to have to live with it, not me. That's number one. number two, I agree with what you said about the current rate with the 10% rollback, because where are all the good jobs, good paying jobs in here? It's in construction right now, that's it. So, and thirdly and lastly, is we cannot operate in a vacuum. Because if the county decides to go back and impose impact fees for transportation, that's going to, any one thing is gonna really hurt the industry. And if they say, well, we're gonna come back and we're gonna add 5,000 for transportation, it's gonna cripple. So I don't wanna add on to anything that's out of our control. So that's my point, and again, hear the board.
We don't approve one new multifamily unit, single-family unit, we have to respond to that. We've got over $200 million worth of capital needs with about just over 17 million. There's a $4.7 million that we've already not taken in. This county has fallen in love over the past 20 years with low-paying jobs, the service industry and construction jobs, which is better than no jobs, but historically pay $15 an hour or less, which again is better than no jobs. I think that to that end, I'll say right here, right now, I'm not in favor of sales taxes, of taxing the working poor, but this is something people coming in, and to your point, maybe people with the median income can't afford these. There's plenty of inventory people with median income in this county can't afford. As far as new homes, maybe we raise the bar on the median income by raising this. I don't know how we can afford to lose $2.5 million or $4.7 million. I appreciate the sensitivity to an industry, but this is an industry that will flourish based on an economy that we really can't control. And we contribute $800 million towards that economy. And we need student stations to house and educate these kids. If somebody moves into their house, they're gonna take their son or daughter to whatever the local school is, walk in, expect a classroom, a teacher, the classroom outfitted with everything that every other classroom in America has, smart boards, etc. And this is how we pay for it. We don't have oceanfront real estate. We don't have the Magic Kingdom here. Our tax base is very limited, and this is called growth paying for itself. Maybe people see it as unfair, and people in this industry will see it as unfair. But my allegiance is to doing what's right for this school district, and we're already short close to $200 million. I don't see how being short another $5 million is going to help us.
I agree with part of that. Excuse me. I agree with part of what you said, that $4 million. I agree with that, and that $2.5 million projected. I agree with that. But we also have to look at, as I said earlier, not operate in a vacuum. Would that number have been there if we didn't have a 10% rollback? Would that number have been there if the county had not eliminated their transportation impact fees? I mean, there was no growth here. You can go right back, and it was a ghost town over there in permitting when the transportation impact fees was there. It was a ghost town. Once the county decided to eliminate that, that's when you saw permitting. That's when they had to, I think they had 2 people down there permitting, I'm not sure. Because all of a sudden there was a huge drop in that. We have to realize it's not a vacuum. I don't know what the county's going to do. I don't know if, Clyde, you can talk to them and see what, because if they went and even raised it $200 and then we raise it, there isn't a cause and effect. You know this, I know that. I would like to get all of it. I know that we're behind the 8 ball here. I agree with you on the sales tax. We could propose all kinds of sales tax. It's not gonna pass. I'll tell you that right now, it won't pass.
I think my comment, though, is going to be along the lines of, don't forget the one-offs. Every time a new home is built or a property is sold, there is a whole lot of money that's spent in this economy that we generate sales tax revenue off of as well. And so it's not looking at, a $2.5 million loss in a year. That's a gross loss. You're not thinking about, in my opinion, the one-offs that we realize as a whole that exist in the periphery of this industry as well that all of us benefit from. So I don't think it's just a one-for-one. The other thing is, I don't know. To me, this isn't necessarily, you talk about an industry. This isn't about, per se, an industry. The cost and an impact fee, although the financial analysis needs to be done from the builder and the developer side, ultimately the consumer ends up paying this. We know it, and it's the way it is across the board.
You always have.
And so what you're looking at is by increasing the fee, you're increasing the entry point into home ownership, which there's intrinsic values that take place throughout every single community based on home ownership. It impacts what we do in education every single day. It impacts the fabric of our community and the stability of our community in the long run as well. So I think your term, looking at it in a vacuum, is a good term. I don't think we can look at this and only think about impact fees and think about what our partners from the home builders or growth management or business advisory or realtors or anyone else, vacation rentals, are looking at. I think we need to think about the whole big picture, and whether we like it or not, if a large percentage of our economy is built upon this sector of the economy, if we start doing things to mess that up, could we end up creating a scenario that's going to cause more damage than good, not only for us, but for our community and our students in the long run?
But the point you made about entry into the homeownership, realm of homeownership, there's plenty of older inventory out there that is available for people to get into the homeownership game for far less than a new home will cost. And it's going up every day, I'll give you that, but there is inventory out there. So to say it's not as
But
much as
there's
it was a
not-
year or two
Yeah,
ago.
there's not as much as people might think there are. And yes, it is increasing. It's been increasing for the past 8 months, but we're still not at a point where we have the inventory levels that we would normally have in an average year. So, listen, I think it's all valid point. We're not taking action on this tonight, but this is all part of the dialogue leading into when we are going to take action. I think the big thing at this point, unless there's any other comments being made looking at the time, is we need to give some direction to staff about when, as a board, we want to move forward with this.
Do you want to- Mr. Thacker?
Looking to the other two board members.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
Mr.
I'm just,
Soto, Mr.
no, Mr. Long, I think that, you know, this is a decision that can be made when you're ready to be making it. You're a school board member until November, and as you, Ms. Horn, if you feel more comfortable not, you know, a new board member having to make the decision, that's fine as well. So I would take the direction of how you feel, and I would give that great weight as to whether or not, you know, we can postpone this. I think that as far as what we have to expect as far as the county commission taking action on this, they may actually not take action on this until they wait for their new members. So, and so, in other words, it doesn't, whether or not we wait is really up to you. I don't see unless you can correct that assumption that I'm making.
No, I would assume the same thing.
It wouldn't make a difference to wait. Okay, I mean, right, as far as financially or anything?
Listen, to me, I don't feel like we need to wait. I mean,
I don't need it, but.
I'm not saying you do.
But I feel, but I will give great consideration to how Mr. Long and Ms. Horn feel about that. Because I think that I've heard from them a desire that this waits.
Well,
And I just want that to be clear.
I don't know where.
Yeah, Mrs. Horn?
technically, I mean, we are still officially a board member until November the, 16th or whatever. Our last board meeting will be November the 4th. So, I personally would just rather go ahead and proceed and do what we need to do.
Then I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. I put that out there.
And there's graciousness in that, and that's recognized. So, Melba Clyde brings something back to us at an upcoming board meeting. The board will take action at that time, and the board will spend time, I'm sure, over the next few weeks discussing with stakeholders what viewpoints are, looking at all the concerns, and be ready to vote when we have that coming
I
forward.
don't know about Mr. Thacker, he was going to say he's here.
Yeah, Clarence, you're here. I'd be glad to recognize you if anything you want to add to this. You certainly don't have to, but we're talking about you coming on the board, so I want to recognize that you're here. You're going to be part of this body as well. If you wanted to comment, you can. If not, you're good.
Well, the other thing, I certainly don't have enough background to do anything at this point. I'm going to meeting with Todd in the next 2 days, and we can go through this in depth. We've only got about 100 questions based on today's comments.
Please contact me with your
General way
opinion.
good is
You can do
fine
that.
with me. There's 2 months to be up to speed
Yep,
by November 18th.
understood. Thank you, sir. Okay.
Mr. Weiser, I'm sorry.
Mr. Phelps.
This may be a question for Larry. When we bring something to the board at the next meeting, does the agenda item have to be specific to what the recommendation is? Or just a general?
Legally, it just has to identify what the topic is and that action will be taken. But the superintendent would typically, you guys would typically recommend
I would like
a
a
specific
recommendation.
action.
Yeah.
I expect a recommendation.
Okay.
I would think that we're going to recommend the study, and then the board would make the motion to
As such.
bring it back to 10%.
10%.
But we're bringing the study forward, this is what we would like you to do.
Yeah, and unless something
Utilizing
changes,
this
Board, I think you
methodology.
recognize that at this
Right.
point in time, the
Yes.
recommendation from the superintendent and staff is to adopt the impact fee as per the outcome of the study. That's the recommendation we're dealing with. Okay. This time, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you.
Board members, there are some children outside from TSA. If you